This edition of MacVoices TV is brought to you by Smile, the makers of Text Expander, Text Expander Touch, PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, and Disklabel. Find out more and download demo versions at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to MacNotables. This is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from. I'm Chuck Joyner, and we get to have a session with Tonya Engst all to ourselves. Tonya, it's great to talk to you.
Hi, Chuck. It's great to be here.
Now, of course, we just don't want to have any session with Tonya Engst. We want to talk about her new Take Control book, Take Control of Your iPad. Tonya, I thought you had already written an iPad book.
All right. So I wrote a book called Take Control of iPad Basics.
I knew it.
And yes, so that book came out very shortly after the iPad shipped. And it came out with a collection of 4 or 5 other Take Control books all about the iPad. So my book was like the little bitty basic book that just went through, like, how to touch it and where the settings app is, and some other nice stuff. And the idea was that all the other iPad books could lean down on it, and then they wouldn't have to explain to everybody where the home screen is and what iTunes syncing is and some of that basic stuff. Those books could go beyond that. And in fact, Take Control of iPad Basics was free for its first 6 or 9 months of existence. So all those other books could just say, look, if you don't know how to do this basic stuff, go download this free book and let's continue with our more advanced treatment over here. So that was all really great for quite a while. And then basically the iPad Basics book got to be a lot of work to keep maintaining through iOS 4 and iOS 4.2 and the release of the iPad 2. And in fact, after I wrote it, I updated it 3 times. So it stopped being a free book. And then with iOS 5 coming out, we had to rethink which Take Control books we were going to update for iOS 5. And it was pretty clear that for our authors, some of them were just coming off of a huge push to do Lion books. Some of them, notably Joe Kissel, was updating his Mobile Me book for iCloud and kind of exhausted from the Lion release, and we just didn't feel like we had the staff resources to update all the books, and it didn't make sense anymore. Like, just what's interesting about the iPad has changed, and we wanted to keep what we're doing interesting as well. So it turned out that we kind of felt like for most Take Control readers, they probably already have an iPad or at least an iPhone, or even if they don't have any of those items, just the concepts that are embodied in these things, like, it's a touch screen. Some of that stuff feels like a lot of our folks already know this stuff, so they don't really need a basic book anymore. There's certainly lots of people in the world who do need a basic book, or who don't want to go beyond a basic book. But we felt like for our kind of readers, they already had the basic book, so we wanted to take them to the next level with whatever we did next. So when I set out to update this book, I said, this will be easy. Not that much has changed in iOS 5. I'll be done in a week or 2. So yeah. So the book got almost doubled in size. It is almost 200 pages in the final draft version where it is right now, because this interview is being taped before we've actually released the book. So we're just going into production right now, and it's almost 200 pages, which is on the long side for a Take Control title. And there's, some basic stuff, because you can't really have a book called Take Control of Your iPad without building people up from basic stuff to advanced stuff. But there's just a lot of stuff that was definitely more than basic. And because we didn't update some of the books that we had before, I was able to kind of suck in some of the content from them and update the content in the new book. And then for the books that I know that we're still doing, because we are doing a few, I sort of had to realign the book for what those authors were doing. So it turned out to be a huge project. And sometime, a month ago, I was thought, this is taking a lot longer than I thought it would, and I shouldn't. As sort of the co-publisher and editor in chief, writing this book is well. As the co-publisher and editor in chief of the series, being an author is something that's sort of an indulgence. It takes a huge amount of time, and it's hard for me to keep up with everything else while I write the book. And I always think that it's sort of a mistake. But then on the other hand, I think, well, now I appreciate what the authors are going through, and I'm able to be more author focused in decisions that I make because I have a better understanding of what they're going through. But anyway, about a month ago, I said to myself, okay, no guts, no glory. We are doing this book. We're staying up late. We're working weekends. We are getting people to help make meals. We're doing this just because that's what authors normally do. They don't just work from, 9 to 5. They have to go crawl into their hole. So to the extent possible, while running a business and being, a mom and an active member of the PTA and all this other stuff, I've been off in my hole writing my book, which was very fun, but it took longer than I had thought it might. But there's so much. There's so much in this thing, and I thought I was basically pretty much done. And then I installed iTunes Match just to see what would happen, to see if I should just, tweak a few sentences. And I was like, oh. So it's just sort of been a process of discovery. But we need to get this book out before more things change, and so people can start reading it. Yeah.
And especially heading into the holiday season, I mean, the good news is it's a perfect time because there are a lot of people that are going to get a new iPad. I think, if I remember correctly, some ridiculous number of kids had an iPad as the number one thing on their want list. I know an awful lot of adults who have an iPad as the number one thing. And as natural as it is, and we talk a lot about it on the shows, about how easy it is to pick up an iPad and do it and use it, that usually applies to the basic operation of it. You really don't have to learn the old thing of this is a mouse, this is a cursor, here are the menus. But to get the most out of the iPad, they really need somebody to walk them through things. And now, especially with iOS 5 and, like you said, iTunes Match and a lot of things that people are going to want to do, they're going to be some of the first things they want to do with their iPad out of the box.
Yep. I think honestly, I'm looking forward to the holiday season later in December when things slow down, because I'm hoping to have some time to just, like, in a relaxed kind of way, just play with the iPad in terms of, taking some of the apps that I like to use, or taking some of the media that I like to enjoy on it, and actually, sitting down with it and spending time with it without, taking notes or saying, oh, well, that's cool, but what happens if I wipe out the iPad entirely and start fresh and configure it a different way and then do the same thing? So I'm looking forward to having the time over the holidays for that. And I think there are a number of more geekier people who are looking forward to some moderate downtime so that we can sort of refresh and renew our geek activities. It's been pretty nonstop this past year. I've been hearing from a lot of people who are kind of the IT person in their house, or, the person who a lot of people go to for advice. And with iCloud especially, there's a lot of different options and changes right now. So people are spending, I think, a lot of time like wiring up how their data flows around, getting all the pipes for how their contacts move and how their photos move and all this, just getting it set up. And I think maybe over the holidays, people who haven't gotten it set up will have some time to set it up. And people who have gotten it set up maybe can sit back and say, oh, look, I just took all these pictures on my iPhone and here they are in my photo stream. And hey, wait a minute, I think they'll work on my Apple TV, but I haven't had a chance to try that. And they'll try it and be able to sort of enjoy it more instead of just going through the day-to-day where there isn't as much time to explore that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. In fact, I've got a number of things I want to do with iCloud. I've got Joe Kissel's take control of iCloud sitting here. I've printed out certain sections because I want to play with them, but I also know that if they don't go right, it's going to take a little while. So I too am looking forward to some holiday geekiness, hopefully when things slow down. But I don't know. It seems very strange for anybody to say, gee, I'm looking forward to the holidays because things will slow down. That doesn't sound right.
Well, you can focus on different things. And of course, if you're going to an exotic location for the holidays, or your 16 grandchildren are coming to visit, or, that kind of thing, you're not going to spend a lot of time on new technology. But um, I think it's a nice time to just play with it. Or if you have to install a lot of stuff where it's mostly a matter of clicking buttons and coming back in an hour and clicking another button, it's a good time to get through that, because if something goes horribly wrong or it takes a long time, you can just go have some more eggnog.
Yeah,
So,
good point. Good point. Well, Tonya, you talked about, that you've tried to take it above and beyond a basic book. I'm not sure it's even possible at this stage to write a comprehensive guide to everything an iPad can do. So
no.
give us an idea of the kind of things that you've helped the user get up and running with. And should this book be considered just for a new user, or is it someone who maybe has had an iPad for a while and is just looking to get more out of it?
Well, ultimately, my passion for writing the Take Control series is writing books for people who already feel comfortable and competent using computers, and who feel comfortable and competent reading books aimed at upper high school or college level kind of reading level, and who do not want to just have the book tell them what they could probably figure out by just looking at the screen. So for someone who doesn't meet all those criteria, they're not comfortable with computers generally, reading is difficult for them, perhaps one or the other, then we're not really the right series for them. But if you are the kind of person who gets frustrated with books who just tell you what's to you is completely obvious by looking at the computer, then this book is, more in your camp. And I also tend to think of myself as a very typical possible reader of the books. So I figure if I'm interested in something, then my readers are too. And if I find that something has become a little easy because I've already been doing it for several years, I hope that a bunch of the readers are starting to find that easy. And if I find something rather baffling or confusing, then I don't hope anyone finds it baffling or confusing, but I assume that that's a pain point for readers. And especially if I'm getting a lot of email from people saying, hey, I hope you do a book about this and so, or hey, I have a question about this problem, then I know it's a problem that's bothering a lot of people, and I try to bring it into the book. So with this book, I see myself as someone who's been using the iPad all along, so I try not to focus unduly on topics that I think if someone had been using the iPad all along, that they've already got a handle on. That said, I'm not trying to make the book impenetrable for brand new iPad users. So there's definitely stuff in there where if you've just never seen an iPad before in your whole life and you've gotten one, you're not going to be at sea, at all. You're going to be fine. It's just that you'll be in a book that will not only make you fine as a new user, it will also make you fine as you progress along and start to have more advanced questions. So it's for a wider range of users, and certainly people who have had the iPad for the last year and a half and have explored it are going to come to this book and find that it answers, I hope, questions that they may have, or helps them to understand what's going on better, even though they didn't know they had a question. Now, iOS 5 seemed so like the features didn't seem like that much, but writing this book was very challenging because I needed to integrate all the information in what Apple has changed. And what Apple has changed is there's now a setup assistant. So your brand new iPad, or if you completely wipe out and restore an iPad from scratch, your iPad presents you with kind of a on-screen wizard thing, and you have to work through it. So the book needed to walk readers right through that, and it needed to walk them through it, assuming they're actually progressing through the wizard. But then it also needed to address the problem of readers who whipped through the wizard at one time or another, or someone whipped through it for them, and now they're not really sure what was set up or what to do about it or what it meant. So they need to revisit those configuration options. this is where ebooks are great, especially the Take Control ebooks, because we link everything up 6 ways from Sunday, so we can provide a lot of paths for readers through. And then Apple made certain decisions about what should be in the setup assistant. And some of them seem pretty obvious, and some of them it's kind of like, well, somebody had to decide what to put in the setup assistant, but why this thing is in it, but this thing isn't in it. Sometimes I wonder if they had like 20 ideas for features that could go in the setup assistant and they voted, or they could only take 7. So they like threw them down the stairs, on pieces of paper, and whichever ones went the farthest were in. So I had to think about, well, I can't write a book where I explain how to set up every possible feature in the iPad, because the book would be very long and very boring. But, what are an additional 7 or 10 features that a lot of people might be wondering about and probably should set up. So I had to sort of decide. I did decide. And then Apple introduced iCloud. And I bet most people listening to this podcast have heard a bit about iCloud or have an opinion about iCloud. But I can tell you this, iCloud is supposed to make it easier because it is a fluid option for moving a lot of data onto your iPad and for syncing that data with other devices that you might have, computers and iPhones and that kind of thing. And in kind of a new situation for a new user, and sort of moving forward, this is true. I believe it will, or even that it does. But from the point of view of writing a book where you say to someone, so you want to look at your calendars on the iPad. Now, let's talk about the ways you can put your calendars into your iPad. Well, you can use iCloud. That's an option. Okay, but wait, there's Google Calendars. And there's the iTunes Sync, which could be wired or wireless, just by the way. So by the time you enumerate all the options, really all iCloud has done is to either create another option that wasn't there before, or to replace Mobile Me as an option. But because Mobile Me is still around and some people are having varying degrees of difficulty with switching from Mobile Me to iCloud, really what we have now is a huge, I won't say tangle because I hope I've explained it, but like a huge collection of options for getting your data in and out of your iPad. And there may be what you're doing now and what you will do in 6 months, or what you're doing now is working well enough, but you may not even be aware of all the options. And in all the excitement over iCloud, I think a lot of people may have sort of missed the fact that you can now sync wirelessly. You can do a Wi-Fi sync right to iTunes. So there's 2 wireless ways for kind of core Macintosh people to very logically and reasonably get their data onto their iPad. So from the standpoint of writing a book that covers all these options, it took a lot of thinking and experimenting to come up with something very coherent and linear and rational that people could work their way through in a very methodical way, hopefully a fun and methodical way to get set up. And it is a big, you can ignore it all and just do what you were doing before in iOS 4. But for people who want to embrace what's new in iOS 5, it's a bit to do, for sure.
Tonya, I'm reminded of the last time we talked to Adam. We were talking to him about Lion and the fact that sometimes it's hard for us to go back and pretend to be new users. And that's exactly what you had to do with the iPad. Now, the experience level is not as long with the iPad for any of us because it hasn't been out as long. But you taught me something there that I have not helped a friend set up a new iPad since iOS 5. So I now remember hearing about the wizard, but I didn't even think about that. The fact that the wizard is there, and because I just, like a lot of previous iPad owners, when I got the iPad 2, I just restored from backup, updated iOS 5. Then when it came along, it kept on going. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot there to think about, and a lot that many of us who are existing iPad owners are going to kind of forget about or not even know about. And man, your description of the tangle right now with iCloud and MobileMe and all of those services is a great one. I applaud Apple for not pulling the rug out from under MobileMe users until June, but at the same time, boy, it is a little bit difficult to exactly wind your way through when you might have part of iCloud running over here and part of part of MobileMe running over there.
Right. And I should just clarify right up front for anyone who has heard the words mobile me and heard that I'd written a book. The book will not help you very much if you want to set up mobile me and you don't know how. My focus is really on iCloud or other options because Google Sync is a good choice for anyone who sort of doesn't want to use iCloud. Lots of people are using Microsoft Exchange. There are other options as well. So because Mobile Me really is going to end in June, and because there's just only so much time in the world, I chose to not test and explain Mobile Me. I mean, I mention it in the book as a choice, but you're kind of on your own for the nuances. And so I want to be clear about that up front.
Yeah, and we should plug Joe's Take Control of iCloud book because that's where you want to go, whether you're using a Mac or an iPad, to address some of those things. The transition's over. We talked to Joe, on MacVoices TV about that, and it's where you want to go to get those questions answered. And I applaud you. I think it is beyond the scope of what this book should be. This should be something I can't exactly hand it if it's a PDF or an electronic PDF, but that I can give a new iPad owner and say, here, this will get you up and running and let you do more than just the basics. You'll be able to, I don't know, adopt the iPad the way you really should.
Right, you'll get to set up the notification center is so fun in iOS 5. And I'm sure you've been messing around with it, but you just drag down from the top of the screen with one finger, and there it is. And you can configure what of like 1,000 million different notifications can show in there. Especially if you've gotten into downloading some third-party apps, a lot of them have notifications. It's kind of a fun part of the iPad, and is the notifications. So like. I play Words with Friends with my sister and with a few colleagues. And so, if someone makes a move in Words with Friends, I get a notification. And so, no, I don't have my iPad, make a chiming noise at me every time someone plays a game or makes a move. But it's that's just kind of a fun example. Another great new thing about the iPad is the Messages app, which uses Apple's new iMessage service to interface into the world of normal mobile phone text messages. So you can actually send and receive proper text messages with people using mobile phones right on your iPad. And that's just pretty groovy. So that goes into the notification center. Incoming email can go in there. Just really any notification thingy, and you can configure the heck out of it. You can have notifications appear on the home screen. You can have them come up in little dialogues that you have to tap your way out of. So you can't you sort of have to process them and integrate them into your brain before you get rid of them, or they can just flash on the screen and go away. So there's no end to fun.
Tonya, it strikes me, and Notification Center is a great example of it. Apple has really worked hard trying to simplify things and yet trying to add more features that we want. This is not feature bloat. This is stuff that you want and is useful. But it's still a balance between that sophistication and that fullness of features and ease of use.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure about 1,000 million options, but yeah, sometimes it feels like exactly that when you dig into some of this stuff and think, oh my God, where do I even start to understand what it is I'm turning on and off?
Right. Well, you're right. There's not 100,000 million options or whatever, but there are enough options that Apple really is trying to, is walking a very thin line between keeping it simple so that people can just use the thing and get on with their lives, and adding complex features that certain edge cases or unusual groups of users really want so that they can do a particular job better. And see, the classic problem in technology, in software and hardware, companies have to balance that constantly, and some companies balance in different ways, of course, but certainly with iOS 5 we are seeing more complexity, more choices, and just more to know. I mean, one thing that I found so well, I don't know, sort of intellectually engaging, actually, but not simple, about the whole thing with iCloud and getting your data into your iPad, is that every type of data seems to have its own special little rules. So just because you understand, say, how the photo stream works, which is the new iCloud feature where photos that you take or add to your devices in certain ways just magically appear on all your other devices. There's lots of little rules and nuances for what I mean by magically, or if they really will, or how long they'll stick around. But the point is, once you learn everything there is to know about photo streaming, you just fully mastered it. Let's say you think, I wonder if this works for like any of my other media. No, there's nothing really at all like photo stream for music or movies or contacts or really anything. So you've learned one thing, but it doesn't apply anywhere else. And even learning about, contacts and calendars are fairly similar, but learning about them really doesn't help you do anything with your music. And so each little thing to master it, or to take control of it, really requires a whole new page in your brain, a whole new bunch of brain cells linking up in new ways. So intellectually, I found it kind of fascinating from the standpoint of giving users simple, coherent, easy to follow advice. It's challenging as a book author, and for Apple, I think that they've gone way beyond the simple.
Yeah, I agree with you. And part of the challenge is the diversity of features. I mean, Photo Stream is one, Notification Center is another, iMessage is another. We can start down the list. There are so many things here, and it's great, but you sort of have to, like you say, you have to pick one, or pick the ones that you're interested in, then focus in, figure out how they work, whether they can do what you want them to do, and then how do you get them to do exactly what you want them to do within the broader context of their capabilities. So yeah, it is. And as wonderful and simple as the iPad is, as it gets these capabilities, it becomes a little more of a complex device to fully take advantage of.
Right. And on the other hand, if you just kind of want to tap around and download some apps and poke at them, you're going to probably have a lot of fun and get some, actually get productive work done, or really enjoy a significant piece of media. So it's there's still a lot you can do in just kind of floating around happily land. But if you really do want to do something specific that's not obvious, or you just want to feel more comfortable and more competent, there is a fairly big body of information to master, and that is really why this book ended up being almost 200 pages, and why I took basics out of the title, because I felt that just we're in a different era now. It's a whole 18 months later.
And too, that's an interesting comment. 18 months later, and you feel like most people have seen enough of the TV shows, the TV advertisements, enough of the things so that they've gotten a feel for how an iPad works. They may not know all the details and every single hand gesture with 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers or whatever, but they sort of have some rough idea of what it is they're going to do when they first fire this thing up. So it is time to go beyond the basics, and I think that's great.
Right. And I'm seeing people, my dad, people I just meet at, the bus stop or wherever, who don't really self-identify as Apple people or geeks or anything, and they're getting their iPads, they're getting up to speed, they're finding out what they like to do on them, and they're happy to sort of feel that they've come into this new stage of computing, and they're able to participate, and they've learned the basics. And so it seems to me that a lot of people are mastering those basics without reading a book, or they've read the book and mastered the basics and they're comfortable. So it's time to step it up to the next level.
Tonya, this may seem like a redundant question to wrap it up, but what was some of the news? What was the newest thing or the most surprising thing you found out as you started doing the research in the book? And I know we've described a number of things here that you kind of dug into a lot, but anything that was just brand new or really jumped out at you as like, wow, I didn't know it could do this, or wow, I think this is something I can really use to do something I want to do?
Well, I think the whole thing where they've taken it so you don't have to have a computer is the most marvelous thing. You don't have to own a computer at all to use the iPad. And Apple had said that would happen. But the way it manifested and the way my brain kind of began to take that in, what was just really, as a marvelous, I think is the word. So the setup wizard. So you turn on your new iPad, and it welcomes you. You choose your language, and it asks you a few simple questions, and you're in. You're done. You're in. That's really great. And because iCloud makes it possible to back up into the cloud, and because of all the work that Apple has done to let you re-download your media from the App Store and all of that, someone can just have their iPad, and it's just their computer. They don't need anything else. And I think that's really great. The thing that surprised me the most, I think, more was really the Wi-Fi iTunes thing. For whatever reason, I really hadn't realized that was going to be an option. I spent about a week kind of saying, wait a minute, I think you can do this in iTunes, with Wi-Fi. But at that time, I was actually working with the beta, and it was a little complicated to get that set up. But the first time, I was like, wait a minute, it's not attached to the computer, but I think it's syncing. It was just really cool, and marvelous. Really, I think is the word. And the other thing, it's a very small feature, and maybe it's more personal, but I love the 4-finger tap. What is it? The 4-finger, it's the 4-finger swipe. I speak wrong. And you put your 4 fingers down and you swipe up, and the multitasking bar appears on the screen. And I just love that feature so much. The multitasking bar just lets you get at apps that you've launched recently, and it lets you get at the volume control and a few other controls. And the multitasking bar was there in iOS 4. You could get to it. It's just you had to, double press the home button, which still works. But now the 4-finger swipe, it's actually 4 or 5 fingers, whatever works for you. And for a while in iOS 5, that only worked on the iPad 2, which was giving me conniptions because I keep switching back and forth between my iPad 2 and my original iPad when I'm testing. And so it was immediately wired in, and kept but it didn't work. And but with iOS 5.0.1, Apple reinstated that feature into the original iPad. So it's good for everyone. And it's just so fun.
So that's a sample of the stuff that you will learn, folks, if you pick up take control of your iPad. The 4-finger swipe.
4 or 5 fingers.
Yeah. I mean, that's just that there's so many things that, go beyond what you've seen in the commercials on TV or you've seen your friends do because they haven't read Tonya's book, so they don't know. Tonya, obviously, we send folks to takecontrolbooks.com. What's the price of this book?
This book is going to be a $15 book.
Okay. So it's a $15 book. Obviously, it's available from the Take Control website in the iBook store as well.
Yep, it'll be on the iBook store. It'll be on the Kindle store. It'll be Those are the two main places. I recommend that people buy it from the Kindle store or the iBook store if they're looking for like just a really quick, convenient, slap it into the Kindle kind of thing. But if they buy it from our cart, we will know that they have it. We can send them updates. It will be sort of registered. If you buy it somewhere else, you can register it, but it is a little complicated. It is difficult for small ebook publishers to do awesome integration with registering books bought from the Kindle store and the iBook store. So we're working on it.
Yeah, welcome to the brave new world of ebooks.
Yeah, it seems like most publishers are happy to put the books in the big e-bookstores, but they're not looking to kind of bring the customer back and offer them, free updates, or hey, you might want another book, or hey, this ebook has a blog, and here's how you access it, all that kind of stuff. But we're very keen on that kind of integration, and it is sometimes challenging to keep it working with the fast-paced changes of today's ebook world.
Yeah, it's not often that I would tell people to bypass those channels that you're talking about and just go straight to Take Control, because there's a lot of convenience in pulling it down into iBooks or the Kindle app or whatever.
Right.
But
yeah, if you're on your iPhone and you just want the book in a hurry, the iBook store is going to be tap, 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 done. But if you then later want to register the book, it might be more taps than just buying it from us in the first place.
Yeah. So we will have links in the show notes to everything, every location that you can get it as soon as it's available in those locations. But in the meantime, definitely check out and take control of your iPad by Tonya. It will get you up and running, and if you are giving one for the holidays, it makes a great little accompanying gift. Mm-hmm. Tonya, I hope that we get the chance to talk over the holidays, but I also know that you want some geek downtime and recovery, so we'll just play it by ear and see when we can connect.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
It's always fun. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. MacNotables is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from, and Tonya Engst is the author of Take Control of Your iPad, brand new from the Take Control ebooks. Until the next time, thanks for watching.